What's going on, guys? Welcome to an interview edition of Crypto News. My name is Nick Hellman, and today we have Rob Viglione with us. He's the co-founder of ZenCash. How you doing today, Rob?
Good, I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
It's awesome. I guess we'll start this kind of like I do a lot of the other interviews. If you just want to kind of give a brief bio on yourself and really how you got involved in cryptocurrencies.
Sure. So I actually started out my career as a physicist and mathematician working in the military. So I was an Air Force scientist doing kind of satellite radar and launch vehicle stuff. And then I transitioned from there actually to doing some economics, and like a lot of physicists do, they go and get their PhDs in finance. So I was one of those guys, and really I got into Bitcoin in the early days. I guess I lucked out just being part of the libertarian crowd where it really first started resonating. And to me, it resonated really for the big reason that after the financial crisis, I was personally really happy to see an alternative to the traditional financial system. I love the fact that we could kind of separate money from state and do peer-to-peer, kind of like Uberizing finance instead of this kind of like monolithic massive bank and central bank stuff. So that's how I got into Bitcoin, and from there I just started working on some startup projects in the space. Actually, while I was getting my PhD, and then I really was attracted to the privacy part of the industry. Hence, I got into Z Classic, and then from Z Classic we wanted to do a lot more. So then we forked into Zen.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think a lot of people come to the crypto space at first maybe for hopefully the investment gains that people hear about.
Yeah.
But I really think when you start looking into the tech and the fundamentals that this could be really important for the future of global wealth and global finance. For those of the people watching this that don't really know about Zen or may have not heard about Zen at all, could you just give like an elevator pitch or a brief overview of what Zen is and what ZenCash is trying to do here in the ecosystem?
Sure. So Zen is a massively privacy-oriented platform that started with a cryptocurrency. So, as we start to, compare Zen to other privacy-oriented cryptocurrencies, it's really important to talk about the fact that we're actually building out a platform, not just a cryptocurrency. Our cryptocurrency is one of the products, the most important product right now on our platform. But we're building out a whole bunch of others, and you'll see the common thread is we want to support the basic concept that privacy is a fundamental human right. So all of the things that we're building, at least the basic infrastructure, like our chat system, our file storage system, our domain fronting system, these are all things that go and support that basic premise. But from there, we're actually building a whole bunch of other really cool stuff that I think has very important implications to our value proposition.
Yeah, and I kind of have all four of those like pillars, if you want to call them that, written down. So I'm sure we'll get to those here shortly. Yeah. And that's kind of one of the things that got myself interested in Zen, and that I was excited to do an interview with you guys, is you guys aren't just another currency. In my opinion, right. If, say, cryptos do go mainstream, there's only going to be a couple. How many currencies do you really need? And you guys are really building out platforms and products that could be used in traditional markets and have real-world use cases. So that's kind of what got me excited about it. How did Zen come about? Was there a pre-mine, a hard fork, an airdrop?
Oh, no, not at all. So a really big thing for us is we want to be as fair and egalitarian a system as possible. So we actually didn't do any of that. We chose not to have any special rewards for like the founders, for instance. So therefore we did no pre-mine, we did no ICO.
You're breaking up a little bit, Rob.
Capital. Sorry about that.
I think we got you back.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so, because we wanted to be really fair and egalitarian, and we didn't want any agency issues with like an ICO that did a massive lump sum up front, we chose to actually just bootstrap it. So my partner Ralph and I bootstrapped it financially, but we actually have a treasury system that has a block reward diversion, sort of like Dash, where the miners don't get everything. Actually, part of the block rewards go to a community fund, and that's how we fund all of our development and marketing and such.
Yeah, I think your mining breakdown is like 88% goes to miners, 3.5% to the nodes, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, and then the remaining 8.5% to the treasury. I was going to ask you about that later, but I guess since you brought it up, what exactly does that 8.5% go to? I know like Zcash, for example, does like 20% founder rewards, which some people think is too much and unethical. So do you kind of want to talk about how you think came to 8.5% as being a good number and what really goes with that?
I'll tell you, I don't like the half a percentage stuff. In fact, we're going to be rounding up and increasing, our node payouts as well in the very near future. We're about to release a new white paper next week
Awesome.
Not a whole system white paper, but a white paper that actually introduces our platform approach with like side chaining, a new node class we call Supernodes that actually have higher staking requirements and therefore get higher rewards. So we have some really big changes on the horizon. Maybe your viewers could be the first to hear about that.
There we go.
So that's pretty cool. But the 3.5%, the 8.5%, to me it's weird. So we're actually going to up that to 5% for secure nodes, 5% for super nodes, so 10% total for node operators, which is really big increase overall. 80% to miners, then 10% to the community fund. And the reason for the increase in the community fund is we're about to implement, or we actually have a prototype of a voting system where the users or the community themselves could actually vote on projects that get funded. And part of that system is going to be we're going to pay voters. So that extra like 1.5% increase in the community fund is actually to kind of add some more margins so that we can actually pay our voters
kind of
directly.
Incentivize people to get on there and vote and really choose the future here for Zen and try to move it forward. That's pretty cool.
It's a really big thing. The voter apathy does exist, and you see a lot of voting systems out there, whether they're political or proxy voting for corporations. People just don't care. There's this apathy where the marginal value of your time to vote just isn't worth the marginal benefit. So we tweaked the economics a little bit to make the marginal benefit actually well worth it for users.
That's really interesting. And I guess since we're on the topic of nodes, I know under your current format for the secure node, you need like 42 Zen to operate a node. Well, I guess since you brought up super nodes, what are going to be the thresholds for the super node? And then what is kind of going to be the benefit to have a super node versus a standard node?
Yeah. So actually, we're thinking a really big increase in the stake requirement for supernodes because supernodes are going to have to be much more powerful systems, and they're actually going to do there's some economic justification here or technical justification. They're going to be required to do they're going to be the workhorses of our network. So secure nodes right now they're a full node with a valid TLS certificate, and they have uptime requirements, processing requirements, and so forth. The super nodes are going to be required to have about 500 Zen stake. That's the number we're working internally with right now. So that's going to be a really big change economically. But actually, the technical change that's going to be really important is the super nodes are going to be tasked with maintaining sidechains.
Okay.
So we're going to implement a sidechaining system that actually they're going to be tracking all of the nodes on the network. So basically, all of the logic we have right now for the secure node system is executed on server clusters around the world. What we want to do to make it truly censorship resistant and efficient is to migrate all of that logic on chain. The way that we're going to implement it is via sidechains, and the super nodes will be the class of nodes tasked with actually doing that work.
So with that being said, I would assume that the average individual's PC would have to have a higher, like more RAM, more this and that to run a super node. Because I know right now I kind of looked into the specifications a little bit. You only need, the average PC could probably run one of your secure nodes. You need like 4 gigabytes of RAM, a static IP address, and so forth. So interesting.
So we're going to about double that. So I think the number we're looking at now is 8 gigs on the RAM. And also we're looking at doing a distributed file storage system, ZenPub, which I think you also mentioned earlier. So and part of that is going to be storing data on our supernodes. So our supernodes are going to have much higher storage requirements as well.
Do you want to talk a little bit about ZenPub now that we're kind of on the topic of it?
Sure, yeah. Such smooth transition.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So, the way that we approached this was, okay, we started off with a cryptocurrency. When people first looked at our cryptocurrency, they started saying, okay, well, how are you different from Zcash? There's not much there. We're like, okay, well, we added TLS into our protocol. So now you can have client-to-node and node-to-node encryption. And people in the industry look at that and say, okay, big deal. Already snarks are private enough, so really what you're doing isn't that big of a deal. But then we built out this massive node architecture. So now we have, actually, I would argue we're approaching, if not surpassing, the number of nodes that Bitcoin has, which is huge. So we're, at a minimum, for sure, we are in the top 5 node count territory.
Yeah, I know recently you guys tweeted out you guys had like 8,000 secure nodes in a couple months or something like that. Yeah. Obviously, I'm sure that number has increased. Yeah. I'm kind of interested in looking to set up at least a secure node. I don't know if I would have the computer set up in order to do a whole separate super node when that comes out, but we'll kind of look at that as it goes along.
Sure. But what we realized was, okay, we have this massive node architecture or node network. Now, let's flip it around and think about this as an asset. So now we're thinking, well, we have a ton of, we have over 8,000 computers around the world that are high-performing computers because we have requirements for them. Let's start using them. So we have storage capacity that's latent. We have computational capacity that's latent. So we're looking at two major projects here. ZenPub to take advantage of the latent storage capacity on the network. And then something called ZenGrid, which we're actually announcing next week as well, which is basically computation for rent. System. So we have all this computational capability. Well, let's find another way for our node operators to earn income, because ultimately we want to have a valuable economic system for anyone who participates. So you can make money by mining, you can make money by setting up a secure node, a super node, you can make money by participating as a developer, helping out with marketing and whatnot through our forum submission process, and then through our treasury system, voting system. But now we're trying to make another way for people to make money by either storing data on ZenPub or leasing out basically their storage capacity, or leasing out your computational capacity. So we have all of these things. We're trying to really optimize the system for users.
So you're really trying to create a full ecosystem all built around the ZenCash currency, if you will. So is ZenCash going to be needed to utilize all these platforms and really create a value proposition for ZenCash itself?
You nailed it. That's exactly right. So, and that's the really big investment thesis for ZenCash, is that it's kind of the entryway product, or at least the utility requirement token, to operate across our, hopefully over time, vast kind of like interconnected system that adds value across a whole product set.
That's awesome. I guess you have a couple more products that, first of all, guys, he mentioned ZenGrid and Super Nodes. So the community here at Crypto News might be some of the first to be hearing about these products, which is pretty exciting. Yep. But we'll also talk about, if you want to touch base on ZenChat real quick. I know you have that going up. I know it's supposed to be some kind of anonymous chat system, and that's about as much as I really know on the product.
Yeah, so ZenChat was kind of our first extension out of the cryptocurrency, domain, where we said, okay, well, we have some data capacity on all of these transactions. Let's use that. And what we did was we created the most secure private messaging system in the world, because it uses ZK snarks to actually transmit messages. And we basically piggybacked the functions on kind of like our shielded address that were already there. But we built a messaging protocol. And I can tell you from a user experience perspective, it's clunky. And we're not going to have teenagers, swapping out WhatsApp for ZenChat anytime soon. But what it is for people who are in parts of the world that maybe don't have the same freedoms as us. And they could use it without fear of compromise or retribution by maybe like a repressive government. Yeah. So that was really the big feature. Was we want to create a system that empowers the individual no matter where they live in the world, and we think about the end user in parts of the world that are just straight up repressed as like why we're doing this. And our products, at least the core infrastructure products, are designed to help these people.
That's awesome. And then I guess the last product that you guys really have that we wanted to talk about was Zenhide. Do you want to touch a little bit about what Zenhide is and what you guys are doing, the developers are doing with that?
Sure. So Zenhide, that's actually another white paper you're going to see. So actually our mentality with white papers is we're moving away from just a monolithic white paper for the whole project, and now we're having white papers specific to products or features. And so Zenhide is going to be another white paper expect to see in the next couple of weeks. But the developers are actually working on it currently. It's an active project we're working on. And it's really a domain fronting application. And the purpose there is for people who are in repressive parts of the world, say where the government says, hey, you're not allowed to, or in this case, you're not allowed to connect to the internet. And these are the kind of people that we're trying to protect here by having an application that when they connect to our network, they could do it through this secure application, Zenhide, and it looks like they're just connecting to some benign commercial server. Like maybe they're connecting to an AWS server, or they're connecting to Google or whatnot. So that we're trying to make it so that users are protected.
That's interesting. That is really interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. And you kind of already answered this question. I was going to ask, how does Zen really separate itself from Zcoin or Zcash or any other coin using ZSnark technology, or really even Monero, which is using totally different privacy features? You've touched on that a little bit. Since you guys really have all these products and platforms you're trying to utilize ZenCash on. Now, with that being said, I know you guys also have an IOHK partnership. I'm a big fan of Charles Hoskinson, what he's done with ADA, ETC, and some of these other things. Could you kind of elaborate what that partnership really consists of currently and what you're hoping it to be in the future?
Sure, yeah, and likewise, I'll say I'm a big fan of Charles as well. I think he's an awesome guy who, is moving this industry in a great direction. So the partnership we have with his company IOHK, and this is the tech team behind Cardano, which I think is really powerful to think about. We're starting to leverage some of the in-house technologies that they've developed. The two really big ones that we're leveraging, we have two R&D projects with them. One is on this treasury and voting system that I mentioned, so that basically we want a fair and transparent way for the community to directly decide how resources are allocated in the system, because we want to decentralize. That's the first major important R&D project with them. We already have a prototype in testing right now. It's under load testing to simulate scenarios where we have 1,000 voters, 10,000 voters, and 100,000 voters to see if we can stress it. And then we're going to take that prototype and pass it off to one of our production teams to build into our code. The second really important R&D project that I think is so underrated is actually a massive protocol upgrade to a DAG, a directed acyclic graph, which is essentially a generalization of the blockchain structure, where instead of having a linked chain of blocks, we're going to generalize that into a tree where you can have, say, a dozen or 24 blocks solved in parallel per second. So we're looking to actually leapfrog IOTA's technology. So IOTA is what we call a transaction DAG, which basically transactions validate other transactions. We're using a proof of work optimized DAG, which is pretty amazing because it's scientifically validated versus just being an engineering solution that we throw out there without rigorous testing. It's first, we start with the science. And right now, we're starting from some basic white papers. We have mathematicians validating proofs, and then we pass that to an engineering team, and the engineering team prototypes, tests the heck out of it, and then we pass that to a production team to actually build it into our protocol. But if we actually execute this, it is a massive upgrade where we could be looking at, say, 2,000 plus transactions per second and actually be a payment processing system instead of just a store of value or like a utility token.
Wow.
Because we want to be like a virtual nation with like a virtual peer-to-peer full economic system, and you have to have a payment system at the core of that. And to be a payment system, you have to have thousands of transactions per second throughput.
So essentially with that tree that you guys are trying to do without just the normal blockchain, would that mean that instead of miners fighting over one block reward, that they might simultaneously be able to earn the rewards of several blocks at once? Like, would they be able to mine several blocks at once?
So you nailed it. This is actually one of some really interesting features of this technology is we're not wasting proof of work. So what Bitcoin does, and it's for a purpose, right? You have all of these miners around the world, basically in this competitive bookkeeping race to win this, do this random guess to win the right to append the block to the ledger, and only one person wins. So all of the rest of the world's proof of work goes to waste. And this is just ecologically harmful or useless. It's, from a security perspective, a huge disadvantage, because now what we're going to do is retain the full capability of all of the world's proof of work that's working on the next block, and they all win. So if you win the race, we can have a dozen or 24 miners that win per second, and it also decreases the block solution variability. So now individual solo miners can competitively bid here versus having to join a pool or having to be a huge data warehouse, right? So that's kind of cool from an egalitarian decentralization perspective as well.
Yeah, I do a little bit of at-home GPU mining, so I've played around with a lot of the coins we've had on here and whatnot, so that really interests me as well, having the opportunity to maybe do a solo pool or to have better reward outputs if you are in a pool with some other people. So that's cool. Also, talking about IOHK, do you think there's a chance that you get put into their new Daedalus Wallet?
Okay, so I have actually, I teach a Bitcoin course here at the University of South Carolina, and I have Charles coming to visit in 2 weeks to come, talk to my students. And I'll tell you, when we're having some rum or bourbon on my porch, we'll definitely be talking about this.
Bring it up a little bit. Also bring up that I need, I really like ADA, and I know Charles has been traveling a bunch. He's messaged me here and there on Twitter. But if he's got 30 minutes to do this, I would really appreciate it, and I know our community would really appreciate the opportunity to have an interview with him. So I think he does a lot of good work with a ton of projects and really helping out projects like yourself and Storm and ETC. He's really just trying to help this ecosystem thrive, which is awesome.
Exactly.
I know that you guys tweeted something about the governance system that you guys are trying to put into place. Is that currently implemented, or what is really the future for the governance with ZenCash?
So what we can say with governance was we had governance from day one, but it wasn't really that great. Governance from day one was basically a nonprofit corporation where, it has like trustee ownership or custody of community funds. And then we have a team right now of about 50 people, and we have a leadership on the team, basically, division directors. And it's the leadership that kind of collectively comes together and makes these funding allocation decisions. We also have an open forum submission process, kind of like Monero, where you can go into a forum and say, you want to contribute to a wallet, you want to hold a local meetup, you want to do anything that contributes to the ecosystem. And I always encourage people, please submit ideas, because we want to fund as many community projects as possible. But I'll tell you, the bulk of our funding goes towards our core team. We have 50 people. We have these research partnerships with like IOHK. We have other really important technology partnerships with, say, InfoPulse, Crypto Particles, another great dev team that we work with. So that's where the bulk of our funding goes. But we want more grassroots projects. So please go submit. But the next version of this is the IOHK reference treasury model that we're building into our protocol, so that we're going to have directly into our software a voting system. So even for our team, we don't want to be incumbents that are kind of have special privilege that you can't get rid of us. What I want is basically next year when this thing is live, I want to even package my team together and bid as a team into the protocol and have the community decide whether or not they like.
Breaking up a little bit.
Or if they want, or maybe they want to maybe they want to carve out the marketing team into some other marketing team that wants to bid on the project. All right, so that's the future of where we're going, and the future is really close to being here.
That's awesome. Now, talking about the community and you wanting some more grassroots projects, I know compared to some of these other coins, in cryptocurrency space, the community really drives not only the development of the project sometimes, but also the value proposition of the product and how it's doing in the investment space. What I do like is that I talk to a lot of founders and developers, and they're not really too worried about the short-term price fluctuations. Obviously, you guys are here for the long term, so that doesn't really matter. But I do know half of my viewers really are like, Nick, what's a good project to invest in? And I noticed that your guys' community as of now is kind of small. I know you guys just started, but I think over on Twitter you're only looking at like 20,000 followers or something like that. Is there anything you guys are really doing to try to get the Zen name out there and really try to grow your community? Or is there kind of a reason that you think your community may be small right now?
So the first thing was basically we started with a small community, but kind of a diehard community. And I think that that's really important. So there's plenty of projects that it looks like they have a massive community, but it's kind of like guys who just want to speculate on the coin or whatnot.
And or maybe given a free coin or whatever to follow.
Right, exactly. So we could have done stuff like that to artificially boost our, the look of size of our community. But rather, we have a community that really believes in the project, and I think that that's really strong. It's kind of like when Apple started, and the early Apple customers were Apple evangelists, and that's kind of where we are. We wanted to start with like higher quality and people that really believe in the project, our mission, our vision, and want to be part of it. But that said, we basically started to come out of a quasi-stealth mode a few months ago. So our project, the way we were, was we were kind of like, we had some issues actually when we launched. That everything there is kind of public, or maybe some details are a little private. But we went through like a 6-month period where we were kind of restructuring and rebuilding and working on our core technology. But then we hit a point where we said, okay, everything's solid. We have an incredible team now. We have great products, and we have an awesome roadmap. So let's kind of be more public now. And we really flipped that switch about 3 months ago. Even our current website only came live, I think, a month, maybe 6 weeks ago.
That was only a couple weeks ago, I think, honestly.
Yeah,
you guys redid the website and all of that. I try to follow as many of these projects as I can, really, to keep the community up to date. And I know that you guys just redid a bunch of that stuff, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So we just really started to get out there, and doing interviews like this, I think, are the most important thing we can do, because people who are actually shaping kind of like the thought leaders in the industry, like yourself, are actually, this is the grassroots perspective that I think is the most important. Like, sure, we can go and do like paid advertisements and this other stuff, but I think it's better to just get out there on a person-to-person level and show people directly who we are and what we're doing, and let them make their own minds up.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I preach to the community about these interviews. Is I don't really have a bias on any of these. The people reach out, they want to have the coin, or the community tries to reach out. I just kind of get the facts, give you guys some easy questions, some hard questions, and then everybody can kind of make their own decision on what projects they really want to follow and support here in the future. So I guess we're getting towards the end, but I wanted to kind of ask you a little bit question that doesn't really have to do with Zen. What questions do you either personally look up to or believe in yourself? Like, are there any other projects besides Zen that kind of got you into cryptos and you believe in that they really have a real world use case here in the future?
Okay, so there's a couple. Well, I mean, clearly Bitcoin got me into this whole thing. I'm still a huge Bitcoin fan. There's a bunch of other projects where I think the teams and the people are in it for the right reasons, and they're doing really good work. So basically, Cardano and the work that Charles is doing, I think, is awesome. Ethereum Classic is great. Ethereum, also an amazing project with amazing people around the world doing really good stuff. There's non-crypto projects. Like I always like to mention the Seasteading Institute and Blue Frontiers, which is a commercial offshoot from that, where I'm an advisor on that project, and we're actually trying to build offshore startup societies. So like what we're doing with governance on blockchain is really cool, but it's all virtual and digital. What we're trying to do with Blue Frontiers and Seasteading is actually experiment with social governance on an actual physical real world level. And then there's other projects, right? I mean, not to show, but I'm an advisor on ETHLend. And when I choose to be an advisor, it's because I actually believe in the team and the products. And I think they're in it for the right reason. So things like that, where you're actually trying to bring the technology peer-to-peer out into the parts of the world that need it the most, I think are awesome.
Cool.
So I support those.
I like to see that. What's another, obviously they're competitors. I don't want to call them competitors, but is there any other privacy coins that you really think are doing a good job with their development or have really good privacy features? I don't know if you like ZenCash or Monero or any of these other projects popping up, or Pivx.
Yeah, so Zcash, absolutely. What I respect so much about Zcash, well, Zuko and his vision, but then they have some of the best cryptographers in the world working on just the core privacy feature. So when it comes to cryptography research, I think Zcash leads the way, hands down. They do an incredible job. Monero, I think, does a great job from a community perspective. So they're actually getting out there and trying to make it a really useful cryptocurrency. I think it has a lot of value, but what I do think that Monero, one issue they have is they bump up against a real-world use case limit in the sense that every transaction is forced through the anonymizing engine, which is great for security, not so great for mainstreaming it. So I think they have a mainstream limitation. I think Dash does a great job from like a marketing and simplicity perspective. So Dash, the team goes out there and like right now what they're trying to do with, making addresses look like client or names or client account names, kind of like a DNS type, feature. I think that's great. And they're focusing on the new user who doesn't have to know anything about cryptocurrency. So we actually draw inspiration from all of them.
Awesome.
I mean, technology-wise, we draw inspiration from Zcash. But from Monero, we draw inspiration from the grassroots perspective, community perspective, and from Dash, we draw inspiration we have a project called Operation Radical Usability, where we're actually redesigning all of our wallets right now into a flagship user experience, consistent user experience wallet set that's going to be live in about 4 to 6 weeks. And then we have a new user wallet, kind of like what Dash does, where we want to target people who have never heard of cryptocurrency before and don't have to know what a blockchain is to use it.
That's awesome. I'm glad you were open with sharing your opinion on some of these other projects. That's awesome. I guess lastly, the last question I have for you is what are the major milestones you're working towards for the rest of the year here with ZenCash? Obviously, people can go on your roadmap, but is there any other things that really excite you or that you think are vitally important for the year 2018 for the future of Zen?
So we talked about some really heavy-hitting technologies, which are huge and are so underrated, like the governance stuff, the DAG research. But from the user experience side, I think we need to talk about more is we set up the industry's first dedicated help desk. So it's called Zen Help. And we have a ticketing system, and if you have a problem with your wallet or setting up a secure node, you can actually reach a real-life human being. And I think this is really important because even most exchanges do a really terrible job with this. And as a cryptocurrency, this is crazy that we have this system, but it shows that we actually treat users like valued customers that we respect. And this is just a start. Like, we just started it. We're building out a whole comprehensive knowledge base from the questions that we get there most frequently. We're doing a whole video tutorial series on every aspect of setting up wallets, using our products. And then just from our product pipeline, we have a whole bunch of really cool products set to be released in the next 1 to 2 months that I'm really excited about, and I can't wait to actually get out there because it shows that we actually care about our users and the experience they have, and we're not just a technology project. And we have a whole suite of actually hardware devices that we're going to be integrated into. We just finished the Ledger integration, so we're pushing that PR to the actual Ledger team to actually merge their repo. And then we actually have some other partnerships we'll be announcing in the near future with hardware devices, some of them really innovative, cool ones out there that we're able to get into.
That's awesome. I appreciate it on the insight. It sounds like Zen does have a pretty exciting future, and we'll definitely need to get you back on here as some of these products and platforms, go mainstream. Maybe we can test some of the wallets here live for people to see. We'll kind of go from there. I'm pretty excited for Zen myself, guys. It was definitely interesting to have Rob over here to kind of give us some more information and a more of an in-depth look behind the scenes. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe, guys, and we will see you later.